Sudden topical back on another video. I'm Strange Wang. He is Nate. Valentine's Day is coming upon us, so we're doing top 5 favorite romance movies of all time. He'll tell you how our top 5s go, and then we get into it.
He's going to start with his 5 and 4. I'll give my 5 and 4, 3-2, 3-2. Then we trade off number ones. We also have something called the Zemeckis rule, which just means if we both have the same movie on our list, but one person has it 2 spots or higher, then that person will say Zemeckis, and then we'll just talk about the movie once when we get to it on their list.
And hit the spot.
For me, I made one very strong boundary, a rule: no rom-coms. Because my list would have been basically more rom-coms than not. So I went pure romance as I possibly could. That was just my rule. He may feel different. But number 5, I have Dirty Dancing. Forbidden love is something that is easily invested in because our main character, that's the perspective you're going with. So you understand how they feel about this other character and you want them to work, and the outside is against it and they fight through it. And the power of dance when he picks her up, just what a incredible moment that these two characters share together. And as a audience member, that love through dance is shown greatly, and just a nice, sweet smooch at the end.
They had the time of their life.
That's a fact.
Number 4 is for the Before trilogy, but it's Before Sunrise. I'm closest in age to these characters, and that fling, that first met love romance aspect to this movie, I absolutely adore. Summer flings, they were great.
Tell me something I don't know.
Has that relatability. You meet someone, you don't know if you're ever going to see him again, you know? It has that special connection with that other person, and I think it shows that extremely well, and it's truly authentic to itself. And I think that's one thing you can only have when you're a certain age, you know? When you're younger, that fling, because it's kind of pure, because you're kind of not finding that type of relationship yet. So having that for the first time is just really meaningful, and this film shows it all very well. So that's my number 4 and 5.
I own the Criterion trilogy. I really got to actually watch this.
You do.
Yeah.
They're great.
So for my list, I didn't necessarily go like pure romance, but I was like, I went off of like feel or vibe, I guess. So I was like, what 5 movies feel the most romantic to me? And I really appreciate that because it opened up some movies that like maybe the romance doesn't necessarily work out in the end, but the movie feels very romantic. And so for my number 5, I went with Her, very non-traditional romance movie. But
that's going to change in the next 10 years probably.
Well, and that's honestly part of like why I think that movie will be more and more relevant, obviously. But really more so about more than it is necessarily about the romance part of this dichotomy. It's about loneliness. But the solution that most people want for their loneliness is like real romance. And Arthur finds this. Arthur?
That's the name of the Joker.
I know. I can't tell if they both have the same name or if I just got my Joaquin Phoenix movies crossed. Anyways, Joaquin Phoenix's character, he finds this in what ends up being a true AI. And so it's just really interesting, like watching them navigate that. Like they actually get in like little fights about mundane things in the beginning. I mean, like as she evolves, the things they argue about are like a little more serious, but it really is like a romance movie. Like this movie is about him finding a solution to his loneliness in the form of romance and watching this relationship grow. And I think my favorite parts of the movie, that honestly, are listening to him talk about this romance with other people, and how excited about it he is, and like what it means to him, and like other people like commented on how he's like coming out of this like depressed shell that he's been in, and like to me that's what a real life romance can really do for you, you know. And so for it like doing a really good job of portraying that, like I felt like I really wanted to put it on my list. So number 4 for me is The Notebook. I really love this movie, man. Like I think people shit on The Notebook or like Nicholas Sparks things in general a lot. This movie's really good.
And I'm not lying.
Like, it is really good. It has a great script, 2 really, really great actors heading it out, and it is undoubtedly a pure romance. I don't even really care about like the old people part of it. Like the way it ends is good and it's sweet and like everything, but like just getting to watch them when they're young and how all this stuff starts to like when they're older and they got separated, and then, you know, him being mad at her because she just ditched him, but then her being like, I wrote you all the time, or him being like, I wrote you all the time, and her realizing that like her mom was cock blocking her basically because he wasn't good enough, which is another just like really great plot point of a lot of really great romantic movies is we love each other, but one or both of our parents are against it, and we're going to push through that. But they couldn't push through it because they were apart from each other and they didn't have cell phones. So
No.
yeah, I know, right? So yeah, like getting to watch them come back, that, and again, loneliness plays a bit of a part in this movie as well, because he's got his kind of little chick that's like very clearly in love with him, but he's just kind of using her as a cure for his own loneliness, whether he realizes it or not, until she shows back up in his life. Then he's like, you gotta get out of here. And then, but yeah, really sweet movie, really romantic movie, and like covers kind of all facets of like what can go wrong in a romance, but what is like ultimately still beautiful about it.
Well spoken, sir.
Number 3 for me is gonna be La La Land.
That is
Or 1 or 2.
Well, right before we started filming the video, I was like kind of in my head changing my list some. So I'm gonna say that's my number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is the greatest breakup movie of all time, probably.
Yeah.
Because you have such a real, authentic relationship that honestly doesn't end bad. It ends on really good terms.
Right.
And just having that relationship in your life that makes you a better person, I think, whether you agree with it or acknowledge it or not, that's relatable. And again, if you acknowledge it as appreciated, it's respected. And when you see them together at the end of the montage, it warms your heart cockles and it makes you so happy, and then it rips it away.
No! No, no, no!
But as a powerful movie, well directed, watch it again. Watch it. You feel different things when you rewatch this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of La La Land, that you see different things. And just a great modern day relationship with one of the most powerful romantic endings ever. And just hard not to like love this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely like doesn't end, obviously you just said it doesn't end the way that you want it to. It doesn't really end with the romance, but the point of the movie is how important that relationship was. Right? Like neither of them, like he would not have started his club if it wasn't for her. And, like maybe he would have eventually. I mean, we don't know, but the point of the movie is that relationship, regardless of potential outcomes, was the catalyst for him doing that. Her going to that audition, like, would not have happened if he didn't show up to her house to let him know that they called and, like, all that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's just, like, a really beautiful portrayal of, like, there are plenty of people in the world who have romances in their past that don't exist anymore, but you can acknowledge their importance, like, without still being obsessed with that. Like, you can move on, you can fall in love with other people, like, and it doesn't necessarily mean that moment in time isn't still romantic. and isn't still beautiful. And I think that's like really important, like an important thing to acknowledge. And just like the overall vibes of this movie in general are just like romance off the charts. And a lot of it has to do with the score. Like, yeah, it's a musical, and like the musical numbers like play into the building of their romance, but like I'm specifically talking about like the non-musical parts of it. Like Justin Hurwitz's soundtrack that's playing in the background is just like beautiful, and it feels super nostalgic, and it feels like it's putting you kind of in the middle of this dreamlike romance that's building between them. And it's really pretty. I like it.
I like it too.
What are we on? My number 3?
My number 2.
Your number 2.
Which is Titanic. Titanic is a beautiful film. Theme so far, Forbidden Love, is great. It's easy to get invested. The classism aspect of this movie also helps a lot.
Yeah.
We have Leonardo DiCaprio as a shyster. I love shysters in movies, so that resonates with me a little bit, and that makes me want him to get the girl a little bit more. Now, Kate Winslet, she was under 25, so it made sense that Leonardo DiCaprio would want to be with her. But you just take all that investment of the classism, the forbidden love, and elevate that with some of the greatest, most iconic scenes in cinema history, and then you pull it back to Rose modern day, and she moved on. You know, she didn't have this creepy obsession with him all of her life, but he still holds a very, very special spot in this lady's heart, and that's beautiful, and it adds to it. And then when the whole Titanic does the sinking and the shit hits the fan, obviously your investment for these characters is ramped up, and that love that they have, that they share in that dream sequence, is heartbreaking. It's beautiful. Even though it is heartbreaking, it's bittersweet because it does warm your heart. It's the ending you want for these characters, but it does a good job of giving you that with the ending and the reality of the ending. And James Cameron, for the guy who made one of the greatest action films of all time in Terminator, and not a romantic director, he did an excellent job out of his realm mixing the two and made an epic and a romance all in one.
Yeah, I never really thought about this specific part of that before, but like,
it's not on your list.
Good, no.
Damn. Alright.
Good. I mean, it's a good pick. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great pick, but really good on the studio to realize, like, yeah, Cameron's not like a romance guy, but there are parts of this movie that need to be really big, and he can do really big really well. So, like,
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great pick. I definitely thought about it. There were just like a couple that were like, I mean, Her is just me wanting to put something off the beaten path on there for sure.
I thought your 5 would have been Past Lives.
I don't find that movie very romantic. Like, I'm just kind of mad at her most of the movie.
Yeah,
like, I think she's being shitty.
It falls in that genre.
Personally, like, I think she's being a really, really bad wife. Like,
top 5 shitty romance movies.
Yeah, like,
good
yeah,
shitty romance
right.
movies.
Okay, so we're on my number 3,
Yes,
which is The Princess Bride. I really wanted to make it my number 1, and I actually did initially have it as my number 1, but then I was like, well, let me think about that some more. This is a fairy tale romance. Like, through and through, to its core. Does it way better, in my opinion, than Disney has ever done it.
What about Shrek?
Fuck Shrek. I hate Shrek so much. Like, I can't stand it. Shout out to HT and Trudy. Shrek sucks. It doesn't suck. It's way overhyped. Anyways, enough about Shrek. The Princess Bride is like, I just talked about it in another video that I filmed, and I have to remind myself that this is a completely separate video, and it's okay for me to say the exact same things that I said in the other video. It is like, everything in this movie is about them finding a way to be together. And like, because of the circumstances, and because it is like a classical, like, rescue the princess fairy tale. Like, yeah, Wesley has to pull most of the legwork, but Buttercup is like incredibly emotionally strong, like as a person, and not even in like a cheesy way. Like literally, she thought this dude was dead, like refused to be with anyone, like no matter what Humperdinck throws at her, like she is still like steadfast to the core. I'm not about your bullshit. I was gonna say she doesn't fall for his bullshit, but she does believe him when he says that he's gonna send ships to go look for him. But I mean, like, that's what she wanted to hear, and she's like desperate. So, but yeah, like, you throw pretty much any movie into like a true fairy tale setting and not a shitty animated spoof like Shrek, it's gonna automatically feel very romantic.
I guess.
And then it ending on what is, in my opinion, the best kiss in movie history, just really sets it off. So, and I think that even like the cutbacks to like Grandpa reading the story, that like adds this extra level of like nostalgia and like romance to it as well. And like even the kids' pushback to it being romantic, and then him opening up to it in the end because he got so invested in these characters, like it's up there for me. And then my number 2 was La La Land.
My number 1, Casablanca.
That's my number 1. Hooray!
Easy peasy. You have the most romantic film of all time.
Yeah,
and it is
agreed.
Because of charisma, that X factor, the dialogue, the acting, all rolled into one. You just have these sharp, complex characters that you can relate to or admire or romanticize about or look up to, and just the levels, going back to Shrek, the onion and the layers on it is just so deep and fascinating in this film, to where it gives you that choice as an audience member. Where does she go?
Yeah.
And greatest movie ending of all time, probably. Just iconic scene after iconic scene after iconic scene after iconic scene. Some of the best dialogue in film history. And it's all about these two characters who were still in love and their future going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And even story aside, everything about this movie is super romantic. Like, the setting is romantic, both the physical setting and what's going on in the world around them. Like, being in it's like being mid World War II, but being in this place that is somehow still isolated from it, because it being isolated is at the time advantageous for both parties, right? And this woman is literally essentially two separate men's whole heart. And when Rick lost her, he collapsed and went into his little shell. But he still shows those little cracks, like helping the couple at the roulette table. You know, how much he, like, even no matter how snarky he is to them, how much he clearly cares about the people that work for him at the bar. And all of that stuff. And then, like, obviously his reaction when she shows back up, you know, is, it just tells everything. And then eventually we get flashbacks to, like, Paris and them and all that stuff. But what's interesting about it is she was with Rick because she thought Laszlo was dead. She's so important to Laszlo that at the end of the movie, they basically decide that she has to go with him for the cause, essentially. And so there's this whole other side where Laszlo was without her while she was with Rick for the longest time. But we know that she's that important to Laszlo because everyone is like, if he doesn't have her, he might not have the heart to keep this underground movement going on. And so it is like a bigger love triangle than we even really get to see in the film because of how ultimately important she is to the two of them. And yet when they interact with each other, they're both like Like, at no point are they about to come to blows over this woman. They are, like, calm, going about things, seeing how it plays out, essentially letting her make her choice on her own, which I feel like for a movie that came out when it did is, like, probably not the most popular storyline for a woman.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I freaking love this movie. It feels super romantic to me from start to beginning.
Start to beginning.
Yeah, and then to the end. But yeah, my number one also.
Yeah, incredible. Let us know in the comment section below your top 5 favorite romance films of all time. Scroll back up, hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.